It's uniquely American. We celebrate our busyness as a measure of our success. So what if we stopped celebrating being busy? What if instead we celebrated how much time we'd spent listening, pondering, meditating, and enjoying time with the most important people in our lives? And that's where the story begins. My friend Matt Tarkenton recently recommended a book called Essentialism: The Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McKeown. I thought essentialism sounded like a disease you get in your mid-40s. But it turns out essentialism is really a thing. Essentialism suggests that life is not about how to get more things done, it's about how to get the right things done. It doesn't mean doing less just for the sake of doing less. It's about making the wisest possible investment of your time and energy, which allows us to operate at our highest point of contribution by doing only what's essential. See, being really busy is like juggling. A good juggler only touches each ball for a millisecond, but keeps them in the air. They seem to float effortlessly in perfect unison. But have you noticed if the juggler misses one ball, that all the balls come crashing down? When the balls hit the floor, it's chaos, like somebody kicked over an anthill. That's what happens when life goes awry. We've been led to believe that overcommitment is the most efficient way to manage the multiple strands of our lives. But people are starting to wise up. Instead of being the secret weapon of the overachiever, overcommitment is actually making us more anxious and less efficient. For example, a recent study reveals that people who frequently use several media devices at the same time have lower gray matter density in one particular region of the brain compared to those who use just one device occasionally. Another study by the University of California at Irvine focused on measuring the cost of disruptions at work. Surprisingly, the results show that interrupted work is performed faster. Apparently, when people are constantly interrupted, they work faster to compensate for the lost time. Yet working faster with interruptions has its cost. People in the interrupted conditions experienced a higher workload, more stress, higher frustration, more time pressure, and more effort. So interrupted work may be done faster, but at a very steep price. The alternative to chronic busyness is called deep work. Deep work is the ability to work in a hyper-focused state with an intentional effort to increase the quality of your work. The idea was recently championed by MIT alumni and Georgetown professor Cal Newport in his groundbreaking book, Deep Work. Newport breaks down activities into two distinct categories. They're as follows. Deep work is made up of activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive abilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skills, and are hard to replicate. Shallow work, on the other hand, is made up of non-cognitively demanding work, logistical style tasks, often performed while distracted. These efforts tend to not create much new value in the world and are very easy to replicate. Newport claims that excessive exposure to shallow work has a negative effect on our ability to focus our attention. And that negative effect is not easy to reverse. For me, the last 6 months have been a shallow work extravaganza. Working from home on a modified coronavirus lockdown is clearly not my thing. On the surface, working on multiple things at once can seem like a state of hyper-focus or flow. But in reality, it's the ultimate state of distraction. While the brain could seemingly focus on multiple things at once, it is impossible to be in multiple states of flow at one time. According to Cal Newport, human beings, it seems, are at their best when immersed deeply in something challenging. With multitasking, each task only gets a few precious seconds of attention before the brain has to move on. It's like a long strand of Christmas lights where there isn't enough electric power to keep all the bulbs lit. So some bulbs light up only to immediately go out as another bulb further down the strand lights up. Yes, there are moments of near perfection in multitasking, but ultimately the strand fails and is worthless. On the other hand, deep work engages the mind in a 100% engaged state. Deep work requires long stretches of interrupted time to accomplish cognitively intensive work that leads to breakthroughs and high quality and non-replicable work. So why are we in such a big damn hurry anyway? Because everything today is about the destination. Because we no longer value anything about the journey. Because we no longer perceive anything of value in the traveling. Look, I love America, but this land belonged to the Indians long before we arrived with the pumpkin pie and the bullets. But that's a story for another day. I've never really known any American Indians, but I love the spirituality and the intentionality of the people. The only indigenous person I've ever met is Chief Nakahoma. He was the original mascot of the Atlanta Braves from the 1950s until 1986. Oddly enough, the chief was actually a Canadian Indian of the Ottawa Indian tribe. Only in America do we hire a Canadian to play the part of an American Indian, but I digress. If the Braves scored, he came out of the teepee and did a little dance. It would never fly today. As a kid growing up in Atlanta, we used to visit the chief in the teepee for autographs during the games. The Braves never scored, so you could hang out with him for the whole game. A few years ago, I participated in a Native American sweat lodge ceremony. A sweat lodge is a low-profile hut, typically dome-shaped. 12 participants gather in a circle, sitting crisscross applesauce, or what we used to refer to as Indian style before that term went out of favor. Glowing hot rocks are stacked in the center of the tent. It's excruciatingly hot, and the ceremony is not short. They are notoriously patient people. The sweat is an offering to the gods in anticipation of the harvest, or the battle. Similar to purifying yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. There were lots of offerings to the gray wolf and to the west wind. There was chanting, and I think I smoked something in a pipe. I'm pretty sure I didn't inhale. Indigenous Americans knew something about deep work long before Cal Newport. They recognized the wisdom and stillness and quiet. And I think they also knew that all this busyness can steal your soul. My friend and New York Times best-selling author Tommy Newberry is a fan of the Rejuvenation Day. That is, as often as possible, you should take a day to rejuvenate your mind, body, and spirit. It's not a day to run errands or to go to the dentist. It's a day to turn off the phone, unplug everything, and just be still. See, sometimes you don't realize how fast you're moving until you stop, like the end of a roller coaster ride, when the car stops abruptly, but your body wants to keep moving. The goal is to do something that allows your mind to get still. Last quarter, I took a day off and built a small wooden railing in my backyard. No phone, no internet, no music. Just peace and quiet. It took a while to relax. Frankly, it took a while to stop reaching for my phone. Okay, maybe I reached for it a few times, but it wasn't there. But after a few hours, I started to settle in. My mind got quieter and more focused. As I worked on the fence, I started thinking about deep work. This story is a result of those thoughts. How else could I weave Chief Nakahoma and Cal Newport together in a story? And now I'm going to work in the Pope. A few years ago, I visited the Sistine Chapel at the Vatican in Rome, Italy. When Michelangelo was selected by Pope Julius II to paint the ceiling, he was mostly a sculptor. He was reluctant to take the work, but eventually he agreed. Nobody says no to the Pope. He started work in 1508. By 1512, the ceiling contained 343 figures, each painted meticulously. He started in one corner and worked outward. The artistry and detail from start to finish is remarkably different. You can literally see the transformation of Michelangelo's artistry evolve across the ceiling. It's an incredible example of what deep work can produce. For most of us, being overcommitted is a part of our daily lives. Maybe it's because of our jobs or our busy family life, but since we have a few more months in lockdown, let's take full advantage. Let's take some time to unplug. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pause, rejuvenate, and think. Who knows? You might decide you actually like it. And that, my friends, is where the story ends.